Hello, my name is David Tierney, and I'm the host of Thinking Out Loud. On this program, we are interviewing the author, Kate Genovese, who has written 3 books, and her latest book is 2 Weeks Since My Last Confession. And Kate has agreed to come on and share her thoughts in creating the book and the characters in the book and the story behind it. Thank you very much for watching Thinking Out Loud. What prompted the inspiration for 2 Weeks Since My Last Confession?
Well, I like writing about issues. With my first 2 books, 30 Years in September, that had a lot to do with, my personal experience as a nurse, but healthcare. It had to do a lot with healthcare, the HMOs and Medicare, and how it's being abused. And I like to, when I write books, I really like to research and a lot of controversy surrounding those. And then with my second one, it had a lot to do with hepatitis C.
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty informative. And I when people read, I know when I like to read, I like stories about issues.
Mm-hmm.
So with 2 weeks since my last confession, it's really multifaceted. It's a family saga, and it's about a large Irish Catholic family in the Boston area spanning over 30 years, from 1951 through the 80s. But there's a lot to talk about in it. There's sexual abuse.
Well, I was going to ask you, what were some of the issues that you were trying to bring out in 2 Weeks Since My Last Confession?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was trying to really bring out the sexual abuse issue. There's some physical abuse in it, and also drug addiction, which is very important, and as well as teenage pregnancy. So all those are very, hot topics, especially with the sexual abuse in the Catholic Church. Teenage pregnancies are happening left and right.
Let me ask you, do all these books have a common thread, other than having a common author being yourself?
I think that the common thread is that all the characters I could really relate to, that I have experienced probably everything that the characters I created in the book have experienced.
The early pregnancy, the abuse?
Well, no, not everything, but
okay.
Almost everything. No,
Okay.
no, not the pregnancy, but the sexual abuse, the drug addiction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then in Loving Joe Gallucci, it's a story about my husband and I, so it's a love story there surrounding that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you think that the word confession is going to, we say confession, we mean the sacrament of confession or reconciliation, the Church calls it today. Do you think that's going to set anybody off, cause any alarm among people?
I don't think so. I think that, first of all, the title came from, well, you were brought up Catholic.
Yes.
2 weeks since my last confession, you go into the confessional and say, "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. It's been 2 weeks since my last confession, and here are my sins." So if you look at it at that, people in our generation can relate to that title. So when you say confession, back then it was, mild things you were telling the priest. Now you're very open, so more of a confession. So I don't think it would be too controversial.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you think there are a lot of immigrants and people from outside the United States coming here who are, in most cases, more devout than most Catholics are here today? Do you think they would have a different reaction to your book?
I don't think so. I think that you're Catholic, you're a Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's many people that have left the Catholic Church because of what has been going on.
Mm-hmm.
They have just gone. But there's an awful lot of, people that have come into the United States, a lot of the Spanish population that are very devout and would stay. So, I think that they'd be very interested in reading the book as well.
Now, how do you think the Catholic Church affected the characters in your book?
I think that they had a huge effect. Molly and Sean and, the other siblings were brought up by a very strict Catholic mother. The father was somewhat strict, and he was Catholic.
Would you say that the Catholic Church gave them their values growing up?
Well, he gave them the values. It wasn't always a good connotation for them. But yes, in many respects. I mean, they always went back to their belief in the Church for the most part. But they also were brought up with the guilt of the church. They felt very guilty about so many things.
I was going to ask you about that. Would that be one of the examples of what you mean by a negative connotation, or one of the negative carryovers from their
Right,
Catholic
right.
upbringing, having that shame
Exactly.
and guilt?
Yeah, they felt guilty about everything.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them. If you read the book, you see Sean, he's in Vietnam. And then later on in years, he's not going to church anymore, and yet he feels really guilty about that because they were brought up, you go to Mass every week, even basic things like, like not to have impure thoughts because that's a mortal sin. And, everything they did in their lives affected them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it made them feel guilty in many ways.
Now, in your book, Molly O'Brien is sexually abused, and we hear a lot about abuse, and more and more of it all the time. How can we as society stop abuse? Or do you think it will stop? Or will it always be with us?
I don't think that it will ever stop.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's been going on since the beginning of time. Even biblically, if you look in the Bible, it happened there. It can be arrested now that we have the awareness of it, and how it can stop or, be aware that it's happening is, like school systems, parents, organizations, sports teams, just to be aware of kids that are acting out, because generally that's how you find out something's going on, something's amiss.
So you think that they're acting out in reaction to some of the abuse they're experiencing,
Yeah.
either at school or among their teammates, classmates, or in their home environment?
Right, exactly. And at an early age, it can happen. They can be very angry. They can act out as little kids sexually themselves. They can be very provocative at an early age. So, I mean, that would be a heads up to me, like what's going on. I was a school nurse for 5 years, and I ran into some kids that we found out afterwards were sexually abused.
Can I ask you, you're a school nurse in a public school or a
In a public school.
Okay.
Yeah. So there was several times that kids came to me with physical problems, because a lot of times emotional issues are manifested by physical problems, like headaches, stomach aches, gee, I don't want to go home today, a variety of different complaints. And when you talk to them and get to the bottom of it, a few times you found out they were being abused by somebody.